Hello, everybody. This is Alan Fine. I'm here with Brad Tolkin, who's the co-president and CEO of World Travel Holdings. And there are a lot of holdings. We're going to talk about, well, Cruises Inc., CruiseOne, Dream Vacation, Villas of Distinction, the list goes on, and this is Insider Travel Report. Brad, I always like, when I'm around you, I hear your take on things. And so what I'd like to know is, what is your take on the coronavirus?
So first, Alan, I'm not sure how old you are, but I'll be 62 this summer. So I was born in the late 50s and I grew up during the Vietnam era. And this is the worst experience in my lifetime. And to put it into context, the Vietnam War was 10 years plus, and we lost 58,200 Americans in that 10-year plus conflict. In the last 10 weeks, we have lost 48,500 Americans. By the end of this month, April 2020, we will have lost more Americans to COVID-19, this particular strain of coronavirus, than we lost in the Vietnam War. And on top of that, there has never been a sustained period in the world, but specifically to our country, where we have stopped. We've been at war. We had September 11th, 2001, where we did shut down the air system for 5 days. But we've never had such a period in our life where the entire, not only economic engine, but personal lives has been shut down, and it will continue to be shut down for the foreseeable future. So on top of the tragedy of lost lives, which is going to exceed in a 12-week period what I experienced during my childhood in the Vietnam War, we have this economic and personal shutdown that we have never experienced in the history of our country. As it pertains to the travel industry, it's been devastating. You don't need to hear from me to read what is published in the newspapers, where airplanes are going out at 5% of capacity. Hotel occupancy in the United States is at less than 10%. And we're not sailing a cruise ship right now anywhere in the world. And so it's been ravaged. And there's no simple statement to say how bad it is, because it's really, really, really bad. It's a total devastation of an industry. And not only cruise, all of travel, not only leisure travel, business travel. I have dear friends in the commercial travel, the business travel arena. We're all in the same position right now. For some strange reason, cruise tends to be a made-for-CNN event. It was back when the Carnival Triumph just lost power. No one was hurt in the Gulf of Mexico, if you recall. In 2013, CNN just followed that ship. I use CNN as, I'm not picking on CNN because other, obviously, media picks it up. But to put this into context, a total, and it's tragic, but a total of 50 people have died on a cruise ship from COVID-19. New York State loses that every other hour. Every other hour. And last week, New York State was losing that every hour. Okay? But on a cruise ship, and we had over 1 million people sail since the outbreak of COVID-19. We sail over 30 million a year. We had probably 1.5 million. 50 people have passed away from this coronavirus. And as I state, as we sit here, New York State loses that every other hour. Yet the cruise industry, got an unfair, and it just was unfairly picked on. And it's terrible what the media did to it.
I agree.
And especially it's terrible because, Alan, you're obviously in the travel business like me. You travel both on cruise ships and you travel to hotels around the world. And I'm more than just in the cruise business. I've been in the leisure travel industry for 40 plus years. There is not a better medically sanitized product regardless of the travel industry, anywhere in the world than a cruise ship. This has nothing to do with COVID-19, but when you go onto cruise ships everywhere, you can't enter a cruise ship restaurant without being asked to sanitize your hands or wash your hands. You can't enter any public bathroom on a cruise ship, any cruise ship in the world, without being able to exit by either waving your hand, or there's a tissue box there so you can grip the handle with a tissue. There is not a better product in terms of medical sanitization public in the world.
Right.
I've had the blessing of having 4 grandchildren over the last 4 years, and so I've visited hospitals for a good reason. I was never asked as I entered the hospital, as I entered my daughters-in-law rooms, to sanitize my hands. But on a cruise ship, you can't go anywhere. So really, it's just amazing how brutal and unfair the media has been about this particular aspect of our lives.
How have you been able to manage the financially for all your holdings at a time like this? I mean, you have employees that you want to retain, you have expenses. What has it been like?
Well, it's been, I hate to go back to the word, but it's been brutal. Fortunately, my brother and I, who own the company, along with a few senior managers of our organization, we never took on any debt, and we never lived off the company personally. And so we enter every year and every month in a solid cash position. Having said that, we moved very quickly, not knowing when this is going to end, and we do not know when it will end. And we have furloughed about 50% of our company, which roughly is about 700 employees have been furloughed. My brother and I have no salary that we're taking. And everybody else in the company is working at either reduced hours, which reduces their compensation, or working full-time at reduced compensation. So it's been just an exercise in how to navigate the most unusual environment in the country's history. And it's not only the travel business, as I said. But yes, it's been brutal, and I feel for every one of those people, the ones that we furloughed that we hope to call back, and the ones that are taking a decrease in their compensation, either because we've asked them to do that while working full time or because they're working less days. But we still have roughly, between our offices here in the United States and the United Kingdom, over 700 employees that are working. So
for the various holdings, are there any, how have plans changed?
I mean, right now, no one's traveling.
Right.
So everything is basically from a departure standpoint, and we recognize our revenue on departure, not on booking. So from a departure standpoint, no one is traveling. So if you went across every business line, we are not focused on departures. If there's one particular business that is less impacted from not a revenue standpoint, from a working standpoint, it's our CruiseLine.com, which is a social media and review site that specializes in the cruise industry. And also we own the app, the Shipmate app. And that's been very active. The community has been very, very active. Obviously our advertisers, because it's a revenue model based upon advertising, our advertisers are not advertising, so we're not collecting any revenue. But just like you are in the media, this is a social media site, and the community is very active, and it's showing a lot of strength in terms of the desire for cruising, which is terrific. We run surveys all the time, and in fact, that we are still taking a lot of business in the cruise arena. We are a large cruise distributor, and our numbers are substantial if you measured it against other entities in terms of what we are taking. We were blessed, not that we foresaw this, but years ago, to save money on real estate, and I'm talking now, we're 10 years into this, our entire, we call it our customer care operation, a lot of people would call it a sales center, is displaced in over 40 states around the United States. We don't have a centralized call center. And so we have perfected over the years, not without issues, whether they be telephone issues, connection issues like we just had when we were trying to connect, but we perfected the work at home environment. So when this hit, we didn't have to worry about sending our people home. They were already working from home. And in our other business, one of our business lines, which is our travel agency business, that's Dream Vacations, CruiseOne and Cruises Inc., our customers all work from, well, I shouldn't say all, but most work from the comfort of their home. There's a couple of dozen that do have storefronts. But most work from the comfort of their home. And what we have been doing over the years is allowing even the people that work in an office work 1 or 2 days from home. So we had that structure. We were lucky there because no one would have done that because we predicted a pandemic one day that would drive us into our homes. We actually did it
because you could.
at a time because we wanted to reduce our real estate overhead. And that was and we wanted to be able to recruit employees from all over the United States, not just to one particular geographic area. And so those were the two primary reasons. So we did not miss a beat. In terms of what we're booking for cruise, as I said, the numbers are still substantial. 75% of what we're booking is for 2021. Then probably another 15% is for Q4. And then 10% is because the cruise lines still have inventory available, or they still have the sailings open between now and the end of September. Although I don't have high hopes that we will be cruising a lot over the summer, based upon where we sit now. But I always tell myself at least 5 times a day that 6 weeks ago, we would never have predicted we're in this position. So don't predict where we're going to be 6 weeks from now. And so I like to look at the glass half full, because if I told anyone that we'd be sitting like this 6 weeks ago, I would have been laughed at. I would have been called the laughing stock. The guy's crazy. Write him off, etc. So I'm not going to predict where we could be 6 weeks from now.
But the glimmer of hope here is that the bookings for 21 are happening.
Oh, they're happening, and they're happening in a big way. There is a thirst for leisure travel, a real thirst, and we are seeing it in our numbers. Now, a lot of those numbers are future cruise credits. I would be telling you,
it's not new money. It's money.
Well, no, it's not. There's a lot of new money. What there isn't is that not a lot of new to cruise. There's not a lot of people who are saying, "Okay, I've never been on a cruise. Now's the time I want to go."
Right.
But there is, I would say, roughly about 60% of the business we're taking is people who have been displaced from a cruise this year. And the other 40% is people who have cruised before that are looking at the opportunity and saying, I want to plan my vacation now. I want my cabin that I love. I want the ship that I love. And they're booking. So there's a lot of reason for optimism. And we will have a great cruise industry. We'll have a great leisure travel industry in the future. The product is too good and the demand is too strong.
So on that subject, what does the cruise industry need to do now to reestablish itself in the public's mind and to offset the unfairness of media and the CDC and the government?
Well, I think that for the moment, we still should stay in a quiet period. We should just allow the clouds to part a little bit more. We're beginning to see, as we read in the papers, the flattening of the curve to the declining of the curve. Every day that goes by, there's more hope that we can medically treat this, which will probably be the first step before we get a vaccine. And then at the appropriate moment, that could be 2 weeks from now, that could be 4 weeks from now, that could be 2 months from now. I can't answer that, But I think that the cruise industry has to talk about how well prepared they were, okay, in terms of medical sanitization, that every cruise ship does have a hospital on it. And there will be a lot of things we will be hearing. Obviously, I can't talk about things that I hear, off the record right now, but there are many things that are taking place to enhance the safety of the product from a medical standpoint that wasn't already done, as I talked about earlier on. And you'll hear a lot about that. I also think at the appropriate time that CLIA will put out, 50 people died on a cruise ship. We have to put the number of deaths on a cruise ship, the number of deaths in the cruise industry at 50 in context with, as I said before, and I'm not picking on New York State because I used to live full time in New York State. 50 people are dying every other hour right now in New York State.
Are there any specific things? I mean, I remember when this really started happening and the planes were still leaving and they were taking people's temperature going on. I mean, will boarding change in your mind?
Boarding is definitely going to change. I think that people will be given an actual slot, a 30-minute slot, and it won't be like you can get there early and hope to board, because there's going to be a lot of crowd control, because one, they will keep some social distancing. Two is there going to be some sort of check, whether it be a temperature check, whether it be some other procedures. So I think we'll be given a slot of when we could board to control. I think it's not inconceivable that you'll be able to schedule your housekeeping so you can be out of the cabin when the housekeepers are in it. And today it's just, they knock on the door and when they get to it. So I think there are going to be things like that do take place.
Well, but car to bar, it will not be as fast as it has been.
It will not be as fast as it has been. But
well, I remember when you would just get on a plane. And now it's normal to get online and have your bags looked at. So it's just another new normal that's going to be developed, I guess.
To me, people obviously in my organization ask me, when will cruising start again? And I tell them, of course, I don't know the answer, but I do tell them we will all know the answer, because this is about society becoming comfortable again. When will our children go to school again? When will they be freely allowed in the playgrounds? When will we sit table to table next to each other in a restaurant? When will we dance at a wedding, wall to wall with friends? When will people be on the New York City subway system again, holding on as the cars move? When will Fenway Park in Boston be filled again? So this to me is not, about cruising, and I can't answer the question, but I can tell you that when society starts doing some of the things that I just asked questions about, that's when the conditions will start to exist for every other thing that we're used to in our lives before 6 weeks ago can return to normal. So I can't predict cruising until I see that.
Got it. As we talked about, so there is some booking going on, but what right now travel advisors are trying to figure out what to do with themselves. What's your advice to them at this time?
Service is the new sales. We used to hate tire kickers. Now we love tire kickers. You want to engage in conversation. You want that person who's just kicking the tire, okay? Because you get to, you really get, different from the last 4 years. You get to build a relationship now with a potential customer. So we're inviting them to reach out to those people who were just kicking tires, and and then service is the new sales. That's basically what's going on right now.
All right. Is there anything else that you want the travel advisors to know?
Only what I said before. I've been in this industry 40 plus years. I've lived through, bankruptcies of airlines. Continental Airlines, which is now United, went bankrupt several times. Eastern Airlines, Pan American, American Airlines. We've lived through wars in the Middle East. We've lived through September 11, 2001. We've lived through a pandemic, not as bad as this one, but we lived through a couple of pandemics. We also had the pandemic of 1918. And there's just two things I would like to leave them with. One is when our country has faced its most dire situation, whether it be the pandemic of 1918, whether it be World War II, or whether it be as most recently as the Great Recession of 2008, 2009, the next decade, whether it be the roaring 20s, whether it be the 50s and 60s, or whether it be the last 10 years that we've experienced, have been phenomenal from an economic standpoint. So when we just get out of the most dire situation, we go into a great economic period. And secondly is, I know it's hard to see, but there will be a great leisure travel industry again, an unbelievable travel industry again. And it's going to be tough for a little bit, but it's going to come out even better than it was just as after 9/11. When we were in the throes of 9/11, we thought, how are people going to travel again? How are they going to feel safe going to Europe? How are they going to feel safe going, China, Russia? Yet look what has happened to the travel industry since September 11, 2001. That's going to happen again.
So Brad, where are you holding up right now?
I am in Miami Beach overlooking what we call Government Cut, which is the port of Miami. And for those who are interested in history, there was no such thing as Fisher Island before 1905 or 06. But the government cut water between what we now know as the south end of Miami Beach, which is where my apartment building is, and Fisher Island. And they created the port of Miami where the cruise ships go today. And the waterway, when you exit the port of Miami, when you're leaving on a cruise ship to go out to the Atlantic Ocean, is actually called Government Cut. And it was a cut made by the government to create the port of Miami. And I am blessed to have this view of the cruise ships. And I'm looking at them, and they're still a thing of beauty to me.
Wait, how long are you going to be at this location? You're going to stay for a while? You're going to find another one?
A couple of weeks, and then my wife and I are driving back to New York.
Oh, okay.
But,
because if we ever have an update, I want the camera facing this way.